You talk about Japan being important to the Xbox effort, but obviously it never quite worked out in Japan. Is there, in hindsight, is there anything you think you could have done differently to get Xbox a strong foothold in Japan?
It's a really good question. I've thought about it a lot. I don't, in the grand scheme of what we were doing, the short answer is I don't think so. And that's not a statement about Japan or about us or about Sony or Nintendo. It's just a question of focus. And it's a question of where you have assets and where you don't have assets. And we had no assets in Japan. Right? We were building a team. Yep. It was a young team, became a very good team, but at the beginning it struggled. We didn't have the relationships with Japanese game developers. Sony and Nintendo.
Inagaki, Ninja Gaiden, but
we did.
A few isolated
ones, but even those wouldn't have been games that you would have said they were actually more popular in the West than they were in Japan.
That's true.
And so we, deeply into the Japanese gaming culture, we just weren't there. And without getting there, success was going to be really tough. And so if I had to do it over again, ironically, I'd spend just enough to make sure we kept ourselves engaged with Japanese companies and Japanese developers for what they wanted to do in the West, but probably spend a little bit less time on it because it distracted us from things where we actually had an opportunity to make progress.
Right.
Really tough. 360 was much better, still challenged, but much better.
Yeah.
And we had better assets, a better team, better engagement, more credibility. The senior leadership in the Japanese game companies turned over a bit at that point, and you had a few younger people leading companies who were a little bit more Western in their thought. That made it a little easier for us.
Final Fantasy came to the
Final
360.
Fantasy came to the product, and so there were 360 was better, but Xbox, it's just really hard. I always tell people it's the only market I've ever been in where we had negative market share. We were taking more in returns than we were selling into the market. That's really hard.